Hello, all. James P. Sutton here. This episode is a bit different from what I usually produce. I wanted to take a moment and discuss the current state of artificial intelligence in light of the current mania in markets. Some of you may know of my books and my focus on science fiction, where AI is both hero and villain. What many don't know is that I am a historian with a primary interest in monetary history. I have begun to see many parallels to historical patterns. If I could recommend a book on the topic, I'd suggest Charles Mackay's Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. It offers a well-rounded historical account of many such manias. Setting aside the history of manias, I have been hesitant to share my full view of the bubbles surrounding AI. I'm not a stockbroker or financial advisor, so take my words as spitballing. I don't see the current mania as a monolithic issue, but a convergence of many separate concepts. I am going to detail each. And some of this you won't like to hear? That's okay. These are just my opinions and fuel for thought. My observations are pragmatic in a sense, but also about risk and intuition. In general, I am bullish on artificial intelligence and find it amazing in potential. I'm not a Skynet doomer, nor am I dismissive about the real impacts of AI. The Are You Replaceable series I published discusses several use cases that I believe will happen. Those changes will likely improve our lives. That said, this podcast is about reality in the stock market, not about futurism. I plan to cover society, energy, scalers, LLMs, GPUs, and the rental market. If you disagree with my thoughts, I welcome it. Please share your ideas in the comments or blast me on X. I'd love to be wrong, and it might spark ideas for my future books. Let's dive in. Without judgment, without passion, just an attempt to reason some of this out. Society, I have come to believe the younger generations have a sense of helplessness. Part of that is the internet gives instant information which spurs cynical thinking. But also we have shifted perspectives over the years. When I was young, people got married early and we worked as a team. Two people combined their intelligence and focus, the latter being more important. That focus tended to lead toward ownership and risk aversion. Over the years, younger people have focused on education and delaying marriage. There are too many issues with education for me to cover here, but I will say that government-backed loans have indebted many young people, and it is a tragedy. My primary thought is on risk aversion. As the marriage age has crept up, it has spurred a mania of its own making. I don't know the exact reason, but it appears to me that younger people feel the need to win the lottery in order to match their parents' lifestyle. Again, this is my opinion, not a judgment. In my day, there was no path but up. Face it, when you start out dirt poor, a rough-hewn plank floor is a win. For many younger people, independence means a step down. Trading a home for an apartment is a step down. Independence has led to more savings, which is good, but it has also led to more speculation and risk-taking. I'm skimming this, but let's face it. If you have a mortgage and two kids, risk-taking is not going to be as prevalent. My point here is not to scold or dismiss. I just wanted to point out an underlying issue. Let's move on to today's real topic, AI and how the market is handling this advancement. Energy. This is a topic I wanted to touch on, but not dwell. As AI has ramped up, there is a push toward many speculative approaches. Utilities are hesitant to add capacity, and rightfully so. Should demand dry up, excess generation has the tendency to drive down prices. My focus is on the speculative side, something called a small modular reactor, or SMR. I don't want to mince words on this topic. In my opinion, this is the dumbest idea I have ever seen. That is not hyperbole. That is 100% my conclusion on the matter. In fact, I will 100% dismiss any argument against this. Why? It is a form of nuclear proliferation that has no precedent. It is one thing for a government with unlimited funds to place SMRS around the country. They have needs that require no profit motive. It is not the technology. Obviously, the U.S. Navy and perhaps other branches have the need for stable power and do not care about prices. For a data center, this is nonsensical. One, guards must be paid for and the complex hardened against potential threats. Two, the power provided is expensive to install and maintain. Three, it requires fissionable material to be scattered across the countryside. There are hundreds of other reasons why this is never going to happen. But those are my primary points. To the mania. A company called Oklo has a $15 billion market cap, zero revenues, and is burning cash. Its plan? It has no contracts, no earnings, but it has a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, with the government for an unproven reactor with an install date of 2028. Let me repeat that in context. An unproven nuclear startup has a market capitalization worth 3 Crocs or 5 Under Armours or 2 Levi's jeans. To say that I am skeptical is, well, I'll shut up. You get it. Let's move on to a brighter spot. Scalers. Companies that are betting on thousands of GPUs and massive data centers. I don't have much of an opinion on these companies. I view their speculation as research and development. If their gambles pay off, it will make our lives better, at least in theory. But it should allow for automated customer support, robotics, autonomous vehicles, etc., etc. R&D is speculative and a return on investment is the goal. This is normal. Depreciation of scalar assets has come under scrutiny of late, and the issue here is more accounting-based. GPUs, the machines that large language models, or LLMs, run on, are not the same as PC hardware. But GAAP treats them the same. Moore's law is a scaling law for PCs and has been called obsolete by GPU manufacturers. If true, then yes, depreciation should be a shorter time frame for a GPU than for a normal PC or server. Why this matters? It matters because if GAAP required faster depreciation of GPUs, then companies would need to restate earnings, thus lowering their earnings. This would mean stock market values would decline. There are other issues that surround earnings, net asset values being another, but sticking just to depreciation. It is a question mark. In my opinion, scalers are not much of a worry. These are companies, usually cash cows that might drop in price some, but it would not put them out of business. I'll get to where I see issues in a moment, but before I do, let me share my observations about LLMs. These language models are what most people are calling artificial intelligence. I call them artificial knowledge, and believe they are going to be useful tools. AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which is what people think AI means, can never be achieved by these models. That's not to say someone won't find a way, but LLMs have a critical flaw. Can that flaw be overcome? Yes, but that requires a massive shift in thinking. Here's the issue with LLMs. An LLM works by plugging holes. Think of it like a jigsaw puzzle, where an LLM uses mathematics to find a piece of the puzzle that fits the hole. This is a very simple way of thinking about it, but it describes the process. If you give the LLM one puzzle, it solves the puzzle fairly easily. Think of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle as parameters. This is wrong, but conceptually it is correct. If the AI has too few parameters, it has a hard time putting the puzzle together because not all the pieces are there. This is how the bubble began. Smart people realized we need more pieces, more parameters, more puzzle pieces. This is why scaling became the institutional imperative. What has happened since is that scalers ramped up the pieces. You might hear this referred to as training data, and that's exactly what it is. The more parameters, the more puzzle pieces, the more puzzles that can be solved. Sounds good, right? Keep scaling and presto, we solve the world's problems. What has actually occurred is counterintuitive. We're now to the point where LLMs have trillions of parameters. To put that into perspective, we loaded LLMs up with millions of jigsaw puzzles and millions more puzzle pieces. What has begun to happen is that LLMs now find pieces that fit but are for the wrong puzzle. The tech bros have a term for this. They call it a hallucination. They pretend to not understand and often attribute this to some mysterious force, but it is not complicated. LLMs, from a technical sense, use calculus to find vectors. The idea is that if a little wavy line fits, it fits, and AI spits out an answer. That's the jigsaw puzzle piece placed into a spot. When it is correct, then we have a great answer. But when it places the wrong piece, we call that a hallucination. It is not a hallucination. It is an error, a jigsaw puzzle piece from puzzle 10,000 that fits into puzzle 1. The more we scale LLMs, the worse the problem. AI will find more answers that fit the open hole. Right, wrong, or indifferent, the LLM doesn't care. The AI engineers aren't dumb, and they know this is true and have come up with many ways to help correct these errors. The problem, this is a fatal flaw of LLMs. That is to say, without enough parameters, the LLM gives bad answers. But with too many parameters, the LLM gives bad answers. I know this is very simplistic in how I describe it, but it really is this simple in theory. The implications are massive, and nobody can say it out loud without cratering stock markets priced for perfection. In practical terms, this means that somewhere between 100 and 700 billion parameters, an LLM works really well. Lower, you get errors. Higher, you get errors. This is not doom and gloom. There will be massive benefits coming from the range of parameters I am pointing to as the error-free sweet spot. There will be errors in that range, and over time we may curb or correct, and that will allow more parameters without ramping up errors. Many people will push back on this point. But if you look at error rates as an inverse parabola, you will find I am correct, that there is a sweet spot where errors dip and then creep back up. If you take my words, plug them into an LLM, you will certainly get pushback. I don't know that the LLM flaw won't be solved, but in my opinion, this is a critical error, and new approaches will have to materialize, and many are working toward that now. Now, the rest of my thesis. Scaling GPUs doesn't matter as much as utilization of GPUs. In my opinion, this is the point where the bubble appears, where markets are not just frothy, but are epically massive in size, scope, and valuation. I hope this isn't too boring, but there are a couple more things to add into the mania before we summarize and conclude. The rental market. To me, this is the driver of popping the speculative bubble in markets. It's a bit more about history and how good ideas go from very profitable to very slim margins at scale. At the heart of it all is NVIDIA. We can't blame the company, but it has fueled a speculative frenzy of borrowing and scaling. The closest parallel I can offer is the 2017 Bitmain Corporation. At the time, cryptocurrencies were going up and people wanted to mine. The margins on mining were amazing. I bought the hype and joined in. I'm embarrassed to tell you my losses, so I will not. In 2017, an ASIC crypto miner was making about $20 a day. More miners, more profit. Like AI, we needed power. But once that was solved, we printed cash. Sound familiar? As the mania grew, So did hash rates, or the total compute of the network. Slowly at first, then all at once, the amount of money made per machine dipped. Soon, it was unprofitable to mine, and across the world, people turned off miners. The reason? Well, it cost more in electricity than could be made from mining. This is the exact position of the GPU rental market. Not long ago, a year maybe, an NVIDIA H100 GPU rented for about $10 an hour. Less than a year later, that same machine rents for $2 to $4 an hour. The cost to keep the machine running is, and I am guessing, around $1 to $1.50 per hour to run. Still looks good and like we are printing money. The problem is these machines are very expensive. The rental companies are using borrowed money. This is completely different from the scalers. OpEx, or operational expenses, is only a part. H100s have a failure rate of about 9%. This is a guess. And my assumption here is that some people cool better than others. Heat and normal operation converge, and units fail perfectly normal. But if you have 10,000 GPUs, and some of these companies have many more than 900 GPUs would need to be replaced per year. I'll let you run the numbers. But my math shows the true cost to rent a GPU is closer to $4 per hour than it is to $1 per hour. That means most people renting GPUs out are operating at negative margins. Once that sinks in, then we look at NVIDIA itself. We have to put the company into perspective. It is arguably the most valuable company in modern history. If you believe its financial reporting, it outsources production and nets about 75% gross margins. Its sales are in the billions. On the surface, it is an unlimited money printing machine. Its market cap as of today reflects this and is larger than the annual economic output of the German people. Here's where things are strange. NVIDIA is the largest company in the world with a market capitalization of about $5 trillion, with a T, trillion, and yet it is still expected to grow about 30% next year. The company needs to roll out its next wave of GPUs called Blackwell machines. These machines promise to dwarf the compute of machines currently in use, 30 times better than an H100 at inference, or finding the puzzle piece, if you will. For training, that is, adding more puzzle pieces. Blackwells roughly double our ability to find the pieces. This is a problem because each new GPU costs about $35,000. But since NVIDIA's customers sell compute, either they upgrade GPUs or they risk their hourly rental rates cratering. When we consider most of these rental companies borrowed the money to start up and are not profitable, we run into math as an issue. Will some survive? Sure. CoreWeave is one of these companies, and NVIDIA has an equity stake in the company. NVIDIA, however, has yet to mark down that ownership stake, and the November 2025 earnings will still show their CoreWeave stake valued at about $137 a share. CoreWeave trades at $75 per share. This is not fraud or a lie, it is a timing issue. NVIDIA closed their books in October, and the price of CoreWeave was higher. Rather than run a circular loop detailing this, it is sufficient to say companies that rent NVIDIA's GPUs are running into the same issues faced by crypto miners. In 2017, the money is drying up. Rental prices are declining as GPUs scale up. NVIDIA has choices: lower prices and crush its own profitability, or keep prices high and lose sales. In my opinion, it all comes down to that one simple binary choice. Having seen NVIDIA's CEO on television, I estimate that hubris wins. Let's wrap this up and tie it into a sweet little bow. This is where I am speculating and can only offer my guesses. On Wednesday of this week, the most valuable company in the world will report earnings. Do not trade on this, folks. I am a historian. not a financial planner. On Wednesday, I believe Nvidia will report better than expected earnings, and the stock market will have a melt your face off rally. That is the beginning of the end. After that point, assuming my thesis is correct and that this is a speculative bubble, history has some examples of what follows. There will be a correction in the market, maybe down 10 to 20%. As fear grips investors that this really was the top, they will be correct, and a sell-off will occur. Then the dip buyers will enter the market and drive these stocks back up. A couple weeks to months after, the inevitable crash will begin. None of this gives me pleasure to say, and it in no way means I believe AI isn't brilliant. AI will not disappear. It will likely become as common as the internet. But there will be pain between here and there. Trillions of dollars will trade hands. Consider this. 7 companies account for 37% of the S&P 500 price. When you add in all AI-related stocks, that percentage balloons to around 50% massive by any measure. As to my thesis, if I am wrong, great. But it would be a first in history. To summarize this, we have a younger population, seemingly addicted to speculation, a questionable growth model, debt-fueled, a bad business model, rentals, and a company that must be perfect. We must grow perpetually or have the inevitable correction.